Hello everyone, welcome back to another Top 10 Commander video. As always, I would like to remind you that my link to TCG Player is my affiliate link. It's in the description below. By using that link, any purchases you make on tcgplayer.com will go towards helping the channel. I value your support. Thank you so much. Now, Double Masters seems to be a set that is just filled with a ton of cards we've already seen in other Master sets. I would say the unfortunate part about continuing the Master sets is that you're just going to blend in with all the other ones. Like, if you go back to the original Modern Masters, it has its own identity. If you go back to Eternal Masters, it has its own identity. I don't know what this set's identity is going to be other than just another reprint set. However, I do believe if you can get a hold of a box for a decent price, you do have a ton of good Commander staples in here. Of course, there are many formats that this set could help, but for the purpose of this video, it's going to be Commander Top 10. So, before I get into the Top 10, let's go over some honorable mentions, cards that I didn't think were quite good enough for my Top 10. But I still mention because I think they're good cards. Mox Opal, pretty good mana rock. I think if you want to play more competitively, a zero-cost artifact that can tap for any mana is usually going to be pretty dang good. I do think that the Metalcraft does hold it back to a degree. I think if you're not committed to artifacts, it's often a dead card, but still definitely one that needed a reprint. We have Walking Ballista. I so badly wanted to put this on the list, but it was mostly for combo purposes. I think it's a great card. If you want to fool around with counters, you could have some fun that way. Just know this one was so close to making it. Noble Hierarch. Now this is another one kind of like Mox Opal. You're going to see it in more competitive decks. That doesn't mean you won't see it in casual ones. It's just one-drop mana dorks tend to be pretty good no matter what mana they tap for. Force of Will, kind of the same deal, a more competitive card, definitely needed a reprint. I would say this and Noble Hierarch have been reprinted before. I don't think it's quite the situation before. Like if you go back to Eternal Masters when this got a reprint for the first time, it was such a big deal. Now it's just one of many good reprints. And then we have the two Planeswalkers. I don't know if they're ever going to stop reprinting these. Jace the Mind Sculptor and Karn Liberated. Obviously powerful cards. I think Jace the Mind Sculptor's value in Commander is a little overrated. But, you know, far from a bad Planeswalker you can have on the field. And Karn, I guess, is just sort of everyone's go-to for a Planeswalker. If you're just playing any color and you need something like colorless removal, there you have Karn. Now the actual list starts. We have number 10, Blightsteel Colossus. Now, I've said this many times before on my channel, I'm not the biggest Blightsteel Colossus fan. I know a lot of people love Blightsteel, but it's one of those things where if you have the blockers, what is it really even doing? If you're playing an Infect deck, then okay, I can understand, but other than that, you're just praying that you get lucky enough to infect someone, give them enough poison counters. I still think, though, it's a fun card if you're able to copy it, if you're able to clone it. It could be very deadly if you want to interact with artifacts in some way, cheat it into play. There's no doubt it's a powerful card. That's why it's on the list. It's honestly one of those situations where it's on here because it hasn't been reprinted before, and I think a lot of people are going to get excited for it. Number 9, we have kind of a tie here. I think they serve a similar purpose, Breya and Atraxa. Breya has not been reprinted before, and Atraxa has been reprinted, I believe, in the second Commander Anthology. You have two of the most popular Commanders in recent memory. Commander 2016 being probably the best Commander set in the last 9 years they've been making the product. So they're both very powerful Commanders. I think Breya specifically can be incredibly powerful with combos. So definitely something I think people are looking forward to building if they can get one. And then number 8 is Riku of the Two Reflections and Kalia of the Vast. Kind of the same situation. You get two very popular Commanders, but this time instead of Commander 2016, it's from the original Commander set back in 2011. And Riku is even harder to get, so you put it in a set that's going to be opened, and yeah, you get a Riku this time. Of course, Kalia, I think, is probably one of the coolest looking commanders. Also, just a fun and crazy cool synergy where you have 3 different creature types. So you get angels, demons, and dragons. Combined with the whole copy thing you can do with Riku, you have 2 very interesting commander options to build around. And I definitely think if you can go back and play with some of those older commanders from 2011, go ahead and do it. Number 7, we have Ad Nauseam. Unlike Noble Hierarch, unlike Force of Will, unlike Mox Opal, Ad Nauseam has never been reprinted before. It's one of those cards in Commander that once you play it, if it resolves, you're probably going to win the game after the fact. This is probably the most dangerous setup card in the game. You're playing mostly 1-drops and the average CMC rarely goes above 3. So you could have 30 to 40 cards in your hand by the time you're getting close to the danger zone, making it really, for 5 mana instant speed, one of, if not the best card in competitive EDH. I think it really just sets itself apart from the other cards. They're good in competitive too. Ad Nauseam, though, is just the card to have for a lot of these decks. Number 6 is Stoneforge Mystic. Another pretty competitive card, I would say in Modern, definitely gets a bad rap. But in Commander, Stoneforge Mystic is actually pretty tame. Not ban-worthy at all. I think if we're talking about white, if we're talking about the speed of white, I think Stoneforge Mystic is more than fair in the Commander format. It really is just a tutor on a creature ETB, which we see a ton of. And yes, it could get you the most powerful equipment in your deck, but for 2 mana, we also have Demonic Tutor. So is it really that oppressive? I think it's definitely a needed card, and the fact that it's getting another reprint means that it's going to be easier for Commander players to get a hold of it, hopefully. And then number 5, we have another very needed reprint, Toxic Deluge. This was also reprinted in Eternal Masters. I just think it's a fantastic card all around. My only complaint is that it's kind of like Damnation. There is really no reason why it should be as expensive as it is. You're talking $30 for a 3-mana board wipe for creatures. I mean, it doesn't really do anything more than that. I understand why Toxic Deluge is good. It is just 3 mana and life to get rid of pretty much whatever's on the board. You can get rid of indestructible creatures this way. It's efficient for the mana. It's also why it's in a bunch of competitive EDH decks. But again, it's just another weird thing in Magic the Gathering where a lot of people do play it, but because it is one of the few black cards that does specifically what this one does, it's just expensive. I think it belongs in just about every black deck though, which is why it's high on my list. And number 4, we have the swords. We have all of the swords from the Scars of Mirrodin block. We get Sword of Body and Mind, Feast and Famine, Fire and Ice, Light and Shadow, and War and Peace. Fantastic equipment cards. I think the swords are just very versatile and they don't necessarily have to fit into a specific strategy. Just offering protection from 2 colors is just insanely powerful. If you have an equipment deck, if you have a Voltron deck, these are some of the best cards you can have because having protection from colors means often you're able to attack a player and they can't really block with their creatures if their creatures are one of those colors. Put more swords on them, then yeah, your opponents are probably screwed. Not to mention the fact that some of these have really powerful abilities. I think specifically for Commander, Sword of Feast and Famine might be the most powerful because it allows you to untap your lands. So if you're a big time equipment fan, this is definitely what you want. You want to see all of these getting reprinted. I think in Modern Horizons we also saw some new swords. Just really useful, and I think when you have something like a Stoneforge Mystic, you're going to look for equipment that can get you out of a problem, and a lot of these swords are good problem solvers. And number 3, we have Mana Crypt. So this one did make the list, obviously Mox Opal missing out, but Mana Crypt, one of the most powerful cards in Commander, period. It is one of those cards, however, that really signals the competitive nature of one's deck. If you are starting out with fast mana, you can pretty much just tell everybody at the table, hey, I'm going to win on turn 4 or 5. It's not always the case. You can, of course, play Mana Crypt in a more casual deck, but I think people are just more interested in optimizing their deck. They either want to fully optimize or they just don't want to optimize at all and go casual. Mana Crypt, though, definitely needed a reprint. It's just fast mana. It's better than Sol Ring. Can't really explain it any better than that. Number 2, we have Cyclonic Rift. This is a much needed reprint. Last time it was reprinted was Commander 2014, so it's been quite some time, and it hasn't stopped being one of the best blue spells ever. So yeah, people still want to pay 7 mana on someone else's turn to overload and have everybody else return their non-land permanents back to their hand. It's just such a crazy good card. So many games are won if you can just reset your opponent's board, fill their hand back up with all the cards on their field, and if they have to discard, well, they may only have 7 left. So it's very useful in that sense. This could be used defensively. This could be used to set up your next turn if you want to swing all out at someone. I just think because of the versatile nature and just the power, there's really not another blue removal card that's even close to being as good as this. And yes, I consider Bounce to be removal. It deals with just about every problem. If your opponents have a lot of planeswalkers, here you go. You have a very good answer. It's just one of those ubiquitous spells in blue. It's just everywhere. The majority of Commander players just love this card and they want it. So, number one, this is a card they could reprint a million times, and I don't think the price is ever going to go down. Doubling Season. For whatever reason, Doubling Season is always the most difficult card to get. And it's kind of like Cyclonic Rift, but in green, we have something that only Doubling Season can do. We have a lot of similar cards. We, of course, have ones that can double tokens, and we have ones that can double counters more efficiently, but Doubling Season does it all. It can double counters, not just plus and plus one counters, but loyalty counters. In addition to all that, it's one-sided, so only you get the benefit. As far as Commander cards go, it's very similar to Cyclonic Rift, just the power and how one-sided the ability is. On average, if you see something like Doubling Season again, it's probably going to be an effect that applies to everybody. Again, with Cyclonic Rift, if you see another card like Cyclonic Rift, it'll probably be all non-land permanents, not just your opponents. So the top two definitely being incredibly powerful one-sided cards in Commander, two that I think most people look for just to take their decks to the next level. So anyway guys, let me know what you think of the top 10. Let me know what cards you're looking forward to getting. Anyway, Void here signing off. Have a wonderful day.